My name never made the slides, not once. 6 years building the core platform that kept the lights on, and every quarterly deck just said tech department. No footnote, no nod, just the same fake smiles and budget trims dressed up as efficiency. I knew I was a ghost in my own legacy the moment Greg walked in wearing $900 sneakers and started talking about agility metrics. He looked at me like I was an expired coupon, still technically valid but embarrassing to use in public. Then came the email, subject line, talent alignment strategy phase 1. Translation: people like me were getting quietly offloaded so he could build his cult of disruption bros. That's when I started keeping notes. And not the kind HR gets to read. Before we go further, I know 90% of you are listening to this without hitting the little subscribe button or tossing us a like. Look, I get it. I've been in your shoes, deep in a spreadsheet coma, multitasking doom. But those clicks, they're what keep the team caffeinated and petty enough to keep finding stories like this. So if you're enjoying the ride, give it a tap. All right, back to my slow descent into corporate gaslight hell. It started slow. Greg's first few weeks were all town halls and synergy fluff. We're going to evolve, he said, grinning like a man who'd just discovered the concept of post-its. He made a big show of flattening org charts and freeing up decision-making, which apparently meant he'd promote his old coworker Trent, yes, Trent, to be my co-lead in R&D. Trent once asked me how APIs worked. I wish that were a joke. You'll love working with him, Greg said, slapping Trent on the back like a golden retriever who just peed in the server room. He brings a fresh perspective. Fresh in this case, meaning he knows how to golf with Greg and confuse Slack with Google Docs. Suddenly, I wasn't copied on investor emails. My product roadmap meetings were rescheduled without notice, usually to times I'd already declined, then marked as unavailable in the notes. Subtle things, but I've worked in tech long enough to know what phase that is, the soft freeze. They don't fire you. Just turn down the volume on your existence until you're an afterthought they can justify replacing with a cheaper, shinier version. But I wasn't panicked. Not yet, I smiled. I nodded. I worked late into the night, as usual, committing clean code, writing up documentation, filing patent updates. My initials sat on every commit line, every feature push. They thought I was just grinding through the last of my motivation. In truth, I was building a paper trail. Quietly, completely, there's a kind of power in being overlooked. You can hear things you're not supposed to hear. Like Greg telling our legal head over drinks that he was planning a symbolic leadership change before the next shareholder meeting. Send a message, he said, make it dramatic, bold. His exact words, apparently, were, let's retire the old guard with flair. He meant me, so I started visiting legal. Not all at once, just little things. Hey, can we dig up my original employment agreement? I'm thinking about revisiting my estate plan. I brought coffee. I smiled. I highlighted a few provisions I didn't remember agreeing to and casually asked about recent revisions to the IP policy. All smiles, all casual. I didn't tell them I'd helped draft that policy. I didn't mention that buried in the 2019 appendix was a clause I'd lobbied for during the acquisition chaos, and legal was too swamped to care. A clause I'd insisted on as a just in case, tucked into the new employment agreement structure under a bland, ignorable title. Section 4B, and just like that, while they planned my exit, I started laying the fuse. Greg made the announcement on a Thursday, right after his culture acceleration breakfast, which was just lukewarm bagels and buzzwords. He stood in front of the department, sleeves rolled up like he'd ever typed a line of code in his life, and said, we're injecting new energy into R&D leadership. This is a big win for cross-functional innovation. Then he motioned to Tyler. Tyler, the intern I trained 3 years ago, the guy who once asked me if version control meant keeping files alphabetized. He stood there smiling like a Labrador in a startup hoodie, nodding along while Greg explained how pairing experience with youthful vision was key to agile transformation. Everyone clapped. Or at least everyone who wanted to keep their jobs did. I just stood there, hands folded, nodding like a bobblehead at a funeral. Tyler thanked Greg with the enthusiasm of someone who still believed stock options weren't monopoly money, then turned to me and said, can't wait to learn from you. I wanted to say, I built the platform you're about to break, but instead I smiled and said, same here. That day I noticed I couldn't access the investor dashboard, just a red permission-denied screen where my reports used to be. My calendar invites to product meetings vanished. I asked Trent, sorry, co-lead Tyler, if the Tuesday integration call had moved. Oh, I think Greg wants me to take lead on that now, he said. You've got a lot on your plate. I had plenty on my plate, all right, like not throwing my company laptop into a wood chipper, so I pivoted. Smile still on, teeth grinding under it. I went back to legal. Estate planning, I said again, sipping coffee like it didn't taste like betrayal. Trying to get everything in order, you know? Just need to revisit a few contract provisions. I requested my onboarding packet. My 2019 revision letter. Anything related to IP or severance policies. I asked about definitions, just for clarity, like what counts as without cause. I even joked about buying a timeshare in Arizona just to make it sound personal. They were helpful, too helpful. No one suspected a thing because no one thought I was capable of playing offense. That was Greg's first mistake. He thought I was just another background fixture, the legacy staff he always talked about trimming like we were bad hedges. Meanwhile, Greg was getting louder. More interviews, more press. Posing with clients next to slides I made, diagrams I wrote, code I architected, and always crediting the amazing team without once saying my name. I watched Tyler at the monthly product sync, tripping over acronyms he didn't understand, calling backend integrations server glue. Greg didn't care. He just beamed like a proud dad at our middle school science fair. And here's the thing, I didn't get angry the way they expected. No slammed doors, no HR complaints. That's not how you win in these places. Corporate warfare isn't fought with feelings, it's fought with paper, with contract clauses, with signatures, with metadata. So I smiled, again. I told Tyler I'd support him however I could. I gave Greg a cheery thumbs up when he said we should all lean in and level up. I even posted a celebratory Slack emoji when the announcement hit the company channel. Then I went home, poured a glass of wine, and opened the folder on my personal laptop. Inside was a PDF labeled Harper Lane Amendment 2019. I reread Section 4B for the third time that week. Upon termination without cause, all intellectual property authored or materially contributed to by the employee shall revert to said employee, including but not limited to source code, technical diagrams, design schematics, and related documentation. I'd authored everything. They just hadn't noticed. Not yet. But I was going to make damn sure they did. I watched the live stream in my kitchen, coffee going cold in my hand, as Tyler stuttered his way through my demo like he'd written it on the back of a napkin 5 minutes before showtime. The company's name splashed across the bottom of the stage in blue LED lights. The slide deck was mine, same layout, same logic. Even the weird animated diagram I'd made of our data pipeline as a vending machine. He didn't even change the fonts. But nowhere, on that screen did my name appear. He called it our proprietary AI integration layer, said it was the result of months of team synergy. Greg sat in the front row nodding like a proud dad who didn't realize his kid had plagiarized their science fair project. By the time Tyler tried to explain our new anomaly detection system and referred to it as auto magic weird thing catching, I had to mute it. Not out of rage, no, I was long past that, but because I didn't want to burst out laughing. That particular subsystem took me 6 months to build and 3 years to defend from idiot rewrites, and now it was being pitched like a TikTok filter. Later that afternoon, one of our longtime external contractors, Ben, guy who always remembered birthdays and never CC'd Greg, sent me a private message. Hey, off the record, I heard from someone on the board that Greg's planning a symbolic leadership change at the next shareholder meeting. He used the word torch passing. Figured you'd want to know. I stared at that message for a full minute, not surprised, just clarified. It was the moment you realize the snake coiled under your porch isn't passing through, it lives there. So I replied, thanks. That helps. Then I opened my calendar and booked a meeting with legal. Just one subject line, contract clarification IP provisions. Scheduled for Friday, mid-morning, just far enough out that I wouldn't raise any alarms, and I didn't send it from my company account. I used my personal email, the one I set up with my middle name spelled wrong so it wouldn't autocomplete. In the meantime, I kept smiling. Greg was in full PR peacock mode, talking to Fast Company about cultural realignment. Kept calling the old team foundational but transitional. I got looped into a Slack channel called #NextGen Leadership, where Tyler asked if we could implement some GPT stuff into the anomaly detection module. I told him we already had. That's what the system was. He replied with a rocket emoji and said, love it. Let's brand it as Tyler AI? I said, sure. Then I opened a notepad file and started cataloging every timestamp, every message, every stolen demo slide, every email thread showing my authorship of the tech stack they were now pretending was crowdsourced from groupthink and startup vibes. At the meeting with legal, I walked in holding nothing but a coffee and a single manila folder. Hey, I know everyone's busy, I said casually, but I was just reviewing some estate planning stuff, long overdue, and realized I might have misunderstood a clause from the 2019 restructuring docs. The GC, a kind man named Ray who once took a sabbatical to write a screenplay about bees, gave me a warm smile and motioned for me to sit. Which clause? Section 4B, I said. The one about IP reversion. I just want to be sure I'm not misreading it. He pulled it up on his laptop and began to skim. You know, I added back when we restructured. I remember there was a lot of discussion around the new equity incentives, but I negotiated this language separately. I just want to be sure it's still valid. Haven't seen any amendments. Ray frowned slightly, tapping his keyboard. Let's see, yes, here it is. He scrolled, paused, then scrolled back. This is still in effect. It's not typical, but well, it was approved. Good to know, I said, sipping my coffee like we were chatting about weekend plans. I'll let my estate guy know. Just dotting eyes. Ray smiled again, oblivious, smart. I thanked him and left, my heart hammering behind my ribs but my steps steady. Greg wanted a show, a torch passing, some grand symbolic firing in front of shareholders to prove he was the new captain steering the ship. That was fine. I was just making sure that when he lit the torch, it was pointed straight at the powder keg. It started with the Git logs. 6 years of commits, thousands of them, each one stamped with my handle, each one tied to the platform's skeleton. Architecture, integrations, fallback protocols, anomaly routing, the entire damn scaffolding. No junior engineer had touched that core logic without me reviewing it first. I'd kept receipts, not out of paranoia, but because when you work in a place that calls you a high-performing support function, you learn to document your own damn legacy. I didn't just write the code. I built the naming conventions, the branching structure, the rollback triggers. Half the system would blue screen without variables I named after obscure references to 90s cartoons. It wasn't ego. It was insurance. Next came the patents. 4 of them filed under the company's name, but guess whose name appears first as inventor on every one? Mine. And tucked beneath the top filing was a legal memo I'd almost forgotten about: me, arguing for independent credit in case of patent monetization. We want to protect the original contributors, I'd said during the review. They'd nodded, distracted, more focused on the lunch menu than the clause I slipped into the internal memo archive. Bless their corporate ADHD. I pulled up the diagrams, UI flowcharts, data mapping sequences, logic trees, and ran a simple audit. How many bore my initials or tracked back to my IP address? All of them? Even the onboarding modules Tyler now claimed as his team's effort. I'd rewritten those after watching a new engineer cry during week 1 because no one explained what an environment variable was. Then I checked Confluence, where our documentation lived. My name was on the revision history like a blood trail. Every major update, every performance tuning write-up, every diagram labeled "Do Not Touch" without asking Harper. Would have been funny if it wasn't so grotesque. Greg wanted a clean narrative, young disruptor streamlines, bloated tech division. But there was no streamlining this. Every cornerstone was etched with my name. And then, Section 4B. I printed it. I annotated it. I highlighted every goddamn word. Upon termination without cause, all intellectual property authored or materially contributed to by the employee shall revert to said employee, including but not limited to source code, technical diagrams, design schematics, and related documentation. It was legal napalm, and no one had read it since I buried it in the 2019 update package during the chaos of the company's pivot to B2B enterprise solutions. Back then, everyone was so obsessed with getting their stock options repriced that I could have inserted a clause about claiming their firstborn and no one would have noticed. What I did next was quiet. No revenge montage, just methodical, obsessive prep. I backed up every log, every email chain with legal, every Slack thread where I corrected architecture proposals, every timestamp where I pushed live code while the executive team was off-site pretending to brainstorm over craft beer and mindfulness circles. Then I did something petty, but important. I downloaded the original onboarding flow diagram, the one they were now showcasing as a revolutionary UX breakthrough, and added a watermark in faint gray text. Originally authored by H. Lane, August 2018. I uploaded it back into the shared folder. If anyone noticed, they didn't say a word. Meanwhile, Greg was busy rehearsing his next all hands, probably practicing how to say Harper's legacy lives on through new talent without choking on his own hubris. Man couldn't spell backend architecture if I tattooed it on his peloton. Tyler sent me a Slack message. Hey, thinking of renaming the anomaly module to Tyler AI Predict. Thoughts? I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed, love it. Just make sure to include all contributors in the final documentation. Of course, he replied with a thumbs up. I added that message to the folder. Named it Documentation Theft Tyler PNG. My war wasn't loud. I didn't raise hell or go to HR. I just buried the knife in paperwork, notarized it, and waited for the idiot kings to sit on it. The setup was done. Every wire soldered, every match ready. They thought they were staging a show of strength at that shareholder meeting. I was preparing a legal disappearance act, and the opening trick was make Harper disappear. The official invite came in with confetti emojis in the subject line. Subject: Party Popper Shareholder Summit 2025 Reorg Reveal and Vision Forward. Party Popper Greg loved a goddamn party, even if it was a funeral in disguise. I wasn't listed on the agenda, not even as a footnote. No mention of R&D leadership, no panel slot, no cue and a mention. Just Greg, Tyler, and the CMO talking about the next era. The PowerPoint had already leaked through someone's cousin on LinkedIn, slides full of buzzwords and stock photos of diverse people high-fiving in glass offices. But the real tell wasn't what was shown, it was what wasn't. No product roadmap, no infrastructure overview, no technical walkthrough of the AI platform, because the person who built all that wasn't speaking. I sat in my kitchen at midnight, laptop open, rereading every clause in my original agreement one more time. I already knew it by heart, but still. I read it again, and again. That clause was the matchstick. My documentation folder was the kerosene. I took a deep breath and drafted the email. Simple, surgical, to myself, personal email, CC, Legal BCC, Marco Delaney, our oldest investor, the only one who once pulled me aside and said, "You're the reason this place works, subject. Section 4B as discussed body, per our prior discussions regarding intellectual property and involuntary termination. Please reference contract appendix, page 12. Relevant clause highlighted. I hit send. The fuse was officially lit. Next came the part no one prepares you for, the waiting, not for the explosion, but for the moment just before it. The dead air, the stillness before the snap. So I filled the silence with focus. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and practiced 2 lines. Only 2, that's all I'd need. Line 1, before I go, may I ask legal to read section 4B of my agreement into the record? Line 2, no, it's absolute, said simply. No venom, just the kind of finality that doesn't need volume to land like a freight train. I practiced the breath between them, the pause, not dramatic, clear. I wasn't aiming for theater. I was aiming for detonation. The night before the meeting, Greg sent out a company-wide video teaser, shot like a Super Bowl ad. Drone shots of the office, a piano soundtrack, his voiceover talking about evolution, courage, and fresh vision. At the end, he winked and said, "Big changes tomorrow, folks, trust the climb." Tyler reposted it with fire emojis. My old team stayed quiet. I took my final steps. I archived every document, exported the source code from our development environment, just my commits. I wasn't stealing anything. I was reclaiming what was already mine, line by line, byte by byte. I backed it all up onto an encrypted drive, sealed it in a drawer, and made a duplicate just in case Greg got any bright ideas after the fact. At 2:34 a.m., I received a bounce back from legal. Out-of-office auto-reply. Will return after shareholder summit, of course. I stared at the ceiling above my bed that night, hands folded over my stomach like I was waiting for burial or birth. It was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, the kind that feels final, like a page waiting for signature. By morning, I was calm, not because I had faith in justice. Not anymore. I was calm because every time they minimized me, I built armor. Every time they took credit, I left a fingerprint. Every time they tried to replace me, I made sure the system would collapse in their hands like wet cardboard without me. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation, precision, math, and I was ready to watch it burn. The ballroom smelled like fresh coffee and dying dreams. Shareholders buzzed around their assigned tables in tailored suits, sipping mimosas and pretending not to loathe each other. On stage, Greg stood under the spotlight like a televangelist about to sell salvation in bulk. Behind him, a screen cycled through meaningless phrases: elevate, innovate, accelerate. Then the house lights dimmed. Cue the vision forward video. There I was, my work, my platform, my diagrams, zipping across the screen like it belonged to someone else. They'd even used the old footage of Tyler pointing at one of my charts, nodding like he'd drawn it in crayon. Greg stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Thank you all for being here. Today is about the future. A bolder, more agile chapter. And with every new chapter, some pages must be turned." He looked at me. I already knew what was coming. He wore that same smirk he used the day he introduced Tyler as my co-lead. That little upturn of the lip like he just told the world's smartest joke and was waiting for the applause. "Today," Greg said, stretching the word like it was a gift, "we are celebrating the retirement of one of our longest-serving contributors. Harper Lane," a pause, not for reflection, for effect. "She's been foundational to our success. But as we pivot into a leaner, more dynamic operational structure, we believe it's time to embrace the next generation of leadership." And then it hit. A wave of performative clapping. Polite, forced, some confused. A few loud whoops from the growth team, clearly briefed to cheer like they just won a bonus. I didn't blink. Greg gestured toward me with a flourish. "Let's all thank Harper for her years of dedicated service. We're proud to carry her legacy forward through the new AI leadership team." More applause, flashbulbs, one camera locked on my face, waiting for breakdown or a tear or maybe a nervous smile. But I gave them nothing. I sat still until the last clap faded into that awkward conference hall echo, and I stood slowly, smoothly, no shaking, no drama. Greg turned, still grinning. "Harper, would you like to say a few words?" I looked at him, then at the crowd, board members, investors, engineers who once brought me bagels when their builds wouldn't compile. A few familiar faces gave me wary half-smiles, unsure what to expect. I took the mic from Greg's hand. He let go too easily, like he'd already moved on to the next act. "Before I go," I said, my voice calm, steady, surgical, "may I ask legal to read section 4B of my employment agreement into the record?" The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was dead. Greg blinked, laughed awkwardly. "I think this is a celebration, Harper. Let's not get into 'I believe it's important for clarity,'" I said, cutting him off without raising my voice. "It's a short clause, one paragraph." Murmurs rippled through the room like someone dropped a lit match in a gas leak. I turned toward the General Counsel, Ray, who sat stiffly at the end of the board's front row table. He looked confused, then concerned. He opened his laptop and clicked through files. I saw the moment recognition hit him, his eyebrows twitched like they'd been pulled by a string. Greg tried again. "Harper, come on, let's not." I turned back to him and spoke my second line. No, it's absolute. That's all I said. No theatrics. No rant, just the truth. Delivered with the quiet detachment of a surgeon removing a tumor. I placed the mic back on the podium. Greg stood frozen, mouth half open, unsure whether to keep smiling or throw a tantrum. The screens behind him, still rolling through product mock-ups and investor quotes, felt suddenly obscene, like someone playing dance music at a funeral. Ray finally cleared his throat and said, I'll need a moment. But I didn't. I stepped off the stage and returned to my seat, hands folded in my lap like a woman who just set the whole building on fire and was waiting for the sirens. I didn't need to fight. I'd already won. Ray adjusted his glasses, squinting at the glowing screen of his laptop like it had suddenly turned radioactive. The ballroom, just moments ago full of clapping and forced optimism, had fallen into that kind of silence that makes air feel thick. I watched him flip between windows, his brows pinched tight. One finger hovered over the trackpad like he was hesitant to touch anything else. Greg stood stiff beside him, still half turned toward the crowd, trying to decide if this was a speed bump or an ambush. A woman in the back coughed. Someone dropped a pen, the echo hit like a drumbeat. Ray finally cleared his throat, voice low but mic'd hot. Yes, I have the file here. Greg leaned toward him, whispering. Ray didn't look up. He began to read, slowly at first. Section 4B. In the event of termination without cause, Greg shifted uncomfortably beside him, glancing toward the back of the room, where the lead investor, Marco, sat, arms crossed, watching like a man who just smelled gas near a flame. Ray continued, his voice tightening with every syllable. All intellectual property authored or materially contributed to by the employee shall revert to said employee, including but not limited to source code, technical diagrams, design schematics, and related documentation. He paused. The second line just sat there, hanging in the stale air like a guillotine on a fraying rope. Ray looked up, first at me, then at Greg, and for a moment something passed across his face, some mix of awe and oh shit. Greg sputtered. What the hell does that even mean? Ray licked his lips, turned another page. According to our archives, Harper Lane is listed as the principal architect and author on all core components of the enterprise AI platform, including patent filings, backend infrastructure, anomaly detection modules, and he swallowed everything presented in this year's product roadmap. Someone dropped their coffee cup. It didn't even shatter, just thudded on the carpet like a body. Greg's voice pitched up. You're telling me she owns the platform? Ray didn't answer immediately. Didn't need to. I sat serene, watching the dominoes fall. 6 years of being sidelined, erased, rebranded into corporate groupthink, and now my name, quietly encoded in every feature they built their valuation on, had come to collect its debt. Greg tried again. This can't be real. This is what, some kind of oversight? We own the product. We own it. Ray turned the laptop slightly toward him. It's signed, countersigned, and unamended. She negotiated this clause during the 2019 restructuring. I caught the flicker of confusion in Greg's eyes, morphing slowly into panic. 2019, the year of the acquisition chaos, the talent reshuffle, the legal department running like a chicken farm with a spreadsheet problem. He never read those contracts. He never even asked. I had. I wrote part of them. Marco, from the back of the room, finally stood. Ray, he said, calm as a courtroom. Is this enforceable? Ray hesitated for a half-second, then nodded. Yes, if she was terminated without cause and if her contributions are documented, which they are. Greg's mouth opened, closed. His hands flailed slightly, searching for a talking point that hadn't been torched. But she's part of the team. This is a team effort. It's not just her. Ray tilted his head. Her name is on every code submission, every filing, every document I can find that predates the reorg. And the clause doesn't refer to ownership by committee. It refers to authorship. That's when the screens behind Greg glitched. Just for a second, a flicker, a minor artifact, but enough to make one of the tech leads sitting near the front lean forward in alarm. I didn't smile. That wasn't the point. This wasn't about vengeance or some petty clapback. This was about the record being corrected, out loud, on paper, in front of every single person who'd spent years pretending my work came from somewhere else. Ray closed his laptop, sat back like a man who just realized he's standing in wet concrete. The silence roared. I folded my hands. There was nothing else I needed to say. It happened fast. Not all at once, but like a row of teeth loosening under one slow punch. First, the CTO, Victor, bolted upright from his seat near the tech table, face drained of all its smug microdose glow. He yanked out his phone, furiously typing. Greg turned to him, whispering something frantic. Victor didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the stage screen, which was now frozen mid-loop on the phrase predictive, adaptive, proprietary. Then the flickering started, barely noticeable at first, a stutter in the background visuals like a buffering hiccup. But then the main screen hiccuped again. Product dashboard overlay behind Greg, meant to showcase our real-time data integrity metrics, blinked red, just for a flash. Ray, still seated, noticed. Is that live? Victor didn't answer. He was already pulling his laptop from his bag, breathing through his mouth like a man trying not to puke on a roller coaster. Greg tried to regain control. Okay, folks, he chuckled, voice warbling like a cheap Bluetooth speaker. Seems we've got a little technical hiccup here. Nothing to worry about, but people were already standing. Investors mostly. Marco had his phone to his ear, face blank. Two others were scrolling fast through their inboxes. One murmured, Jesus Christ, is this enforceable? Ray didn't answer this time. He didn't have to. Victor finally blurted, loud enough for half the room to hear, we've lost backend access. All the source routes are gone. He stopped, staring at the screen. She revoked platform tokens. Jesus. Core repo's been pulled. A younger engineer standing in the back whispered. She air-gapped the architecture. Greg spun around, staring at me like he was trying to telepathically undo the last 15 minutes. Harper, this, whatever this is, it's a misunderstanding. You don't want to do this, but I was already done. He kept going. Look, we can negotiate. You've made your point. We'll revise the record. Retroactively give you credit. We'll talk about equity, real equity. His voice was cracking now, the CEO polish slipping like a mask melting under heat. We're partners, Harper. You fired me, Greg, I said flatly. In front of shareholders, on camera, without cause. The room was a slow brewing riot. Someone from the legal team was paging through a printed stack of contracts so fast the pages blurred. A whisper started in the back of the room, SEC implications. Then another, material IP loss, and someone just said it out loud, she owns the damn product. Victor looked up from his screen, sweat beading on his temples. The system can't reroute. She didn't just unplug it, she rerouted root access through her contributor credentials. It was always her name on the author keys. He turned to Greg like a ghost. We don't have anything. A murmur of disbelief spread like a virus. The shareholder meeting was officially off script. Phones rang, lawyers whispered. One of the junior board members stood and said, we need a closed session, right now. Greg reached for the mic again, but the system went dark, entirely. Behind him, the screen died. No slides, no branding, just black. I stood up, not to speak, just to leave. Greg looked at me one last time, and I saw it, the exact second he realized the pitch deck meant nothing. The AI platform, the product pipeline, the IPO chatter. All of it had rested on the thing he thought was disposable. Me. I turned without a word. My shoes didn't echo. No applause, no flashbulbs this time. Just gasps and muttering and a thick, choking silence. I walked out as the company's future collapsed behind me, code by code, clause by clause. Years of condescension, of being handed other people's credit, of being asked to train the men meant to replace me. All of it distilled into one moment of irreversible truth. The foundation they stood on was never theirs. It was mine, and I'd just taken it with me. Outside, the late morning sun lit the glass exterior of the building like a polished lie. It glared in the windows, illuminated the now useless lobby tablets still displaying the meeting agenda. Shareholder Vision Summit, building tomorrow together. What a joke. Inside, Greg was still trying to breathe life back into the room, flailing for narrative like a drowning man grabs for necktie. This was always meant to be symbolic, he stammered, voice cracking. A celebration of transition, of legacy. Harper's stepping into her next chapter. We're proud of her. Proud to have built this together. I turned back once, slowly. No, I said, clear enough to cut through the room's panic. It's absolute. Then I pushed open the doors and stepped out. No one followed. No one stopped me. They were too busy trying to salvage the wreckage. Too stunned by the realization that their golden goose had flown the coop, with all the eggs, the nest, and the damn tree. I walked across the plaza, my heels clicking on stone like a metronome counting down the end of a dynasty. Outside, the city was just waking up. Cabs honked like nothing had happened. Pedestrians moved around me, aware that half the valuation of a rising tech firm had just dissolved in a hotel conference room. I didn't cry, didn't laugh, didn't gloat. It wasn't a victory parade. It was a conclusion. I hailed a car. No limo, no fanfare, just a quiet ride across town. The driver asked me if I worked in tech. I said yes, still looking out the window. When we pulled up to the building, he raised an eyebrow. Big firm, he said. They do the AI stuff too, right? Something like that, I murmured, handing him a tip big enough to say thanks without implying anything more. The lobby here smelled different, cleaner, sharper, like new funding and real ambition. I stepped through the glass doors into cool marble silence. No banners, no slogans, just a receptionist who stood as soon as she saw me. Miss Lane? Yes, right this way. I followed her down a hallway lined with polished black glass and subtle lighting. At the end, a door opened. Inside sat 3 people. One of them stood. A man with gray at his temples and no Instagram account. The VP of Product. I knew him from back when both our companies were still begging seed investors for meetings in basement cafes. He extended his hand but didn't make me shake it. Instead, he just smiled and said, "We've been waiting." I stepped into the room, and that was it. No confetti, no mic drop. Just a door closing behind me as the future opened ahead. No, I wasn't their overhead. I was their foundation. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.